Hi everybody and welcome to Module 7's lecture. Today we're going to be focusing on web design and content management systems. So let's start by just quickly defining web design. And there's really not going to be an official quote-unquote definition for web design, but what I want to do is kind of equip you with some of the different sort of terminology and job responsibilities that different people related to web often find themselves in. So if you can follow me along with this table, you can see in the left column a variety of different tasks or roles related to sort of web things. So we've got web design, web development, front end, web development back end, UI, which is user interface, and UX, which is user experience. We're going to be talking about web design, but I wanted to quickly kind of walk you through this table. So web design typically is focused more specifically on graphic design or layout. So essentially, we're focusing on getting content, images, pictures, video, laid out and placed onto a web page in a usable way. That's what a web designer is going to do, is going to get the content, the assets onto a web page. For example, if their job was to fix loading times, right? So if, for example, a website loads too slowly, a web designer their job might be to compress image files or resize image files, for example. In contrast, a front-end developer is going to basically take the actual layout and turn it into code. So these are the folks that will execute a design and build the actual HTML and CSS for the project. So to fix loading times, a front-end developer might use CSS sprites. You can Google what that is, but essentially ways to bundle CSS to save on file size. Okay, so that might be the job of a front-end developer, whereas a back-end developer, someone who is in charge of the database of a website. So when we differentiate front end from back end, front end is referring to building things that people see on the website, the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And the back end is usually not seen, right? So this is where the content or the content is stored in the database. So their focus would be on coding for data delivery, right? So getting content from the database onto the actual site itself. So if they wanted to fix loading times, they might be responsible for using a CDN for different geographic regions. So CDN is essentially a content delivery network. It's a way to get your files up on, let's say someone is in Amsterdam. You could put files up on a CDN in Amsterdam, which would load faster than if they were trying to load files from here in Denton, Texas. So that's what a back-end person might be in charge of. And then the last two, user interface designer would be in charge of user controls. So user controls are anything that a user interacts with a website. So these would be things like buttons or form fields or pop-ups or navigation items. These are user controls, things that users actually interface or interact with the app or website with, and that's what a UI designer would be in charge of. If they were asked to fix loading times, for example, they would be in charge of creating a cache control header. This is something that creates actually a cache, which is essentially a local copy of a website or website files. And then the last is a user experience designer. So this is the overall user experience of a design. And to fix loading times, a UX designer might work on the landing page before others do, right? They might decide what are the things that a user actually needs. What tasks are they trying to accomplish? How do we deliver content to users based on the tasks they're trying to accomplish? Right? So instead of reducing file sizes or creating these different delivery methods for files, a UX designer might be in charge of actually just building out the the landing page so that it is meeting the needs of the user experience most closely. So that was probably overkill, but I wanted to walk you through some of the different sort of tasks or roles that web people might find themselves in. For the purposes of this class and the purposes of TECM, we usually find ourselves in the web design, front end, UI, and UX space. So usually this back end is usually reserved for engineers. The other roles, TECM people might find themselves in any of these other roles. We are going to focus mostly on web/graphic design for this project. And I wanted to quickly point out a really good resource. This resource is linked on the Module 7 readings and other content page on Canvas. But it's also linked here in case you can't find it there. But I wanted to quickly show you that it's got a ton of helpful resources for front end and graphic design for the web. So you can use it to find typography. So you can use it to find free fonts. I like to use Google Fonts because they're the easiest to load and they are for sure free and open source. You can find stock photo libraries, and you can find specific ones that are royalty free that you're actually allowed to use. Stock graphics, infographics, collaboration, and colors, and design inspiration. So there is a lot of free resources here that I just wanted to make available and point them out to you. Next, I want to talk about why we are using a content management system instead of coding in HTML and CSS, and coding in raw HTML and CSS. So there's at least 5 reasons for using a content management system. So the first is mostly no code, right? So we're going to use WordPress. Real sort of actual WordPress developers will likely have to know code, but you can still put together a pretty decent looking website and a pretty decently effective website with no code. Second, ease of collaboration, right? So you can have multiple users in a content management system, and in WordPress in particular, you can assign roles to those users. So you can have a user that's an editor, for example, versus one that's an administrator who would be working more on maybe the back end. So ease of collaboration. Number 3, there are built-in and current features, especially with WordPress being a huge platform that houses a huge number of websites. There are so many different free layouts, templates, plugins, all kinds of things that can help you build your site. Number 4, there's pre-designed templates, so you don't have to be a trained graphic designer, though it certainly helps, because you can use some pre-designed templates. And then number 5, I've underlined and bolded because it's the most important, simple updates, right? So for example, if we wanted to change the name of a page in our navigation bar, and we were coding in HTML and CSS, but not using a content management system, we would have to change that name on every file in the website. So if there's 100 pages on the website, we'd have to change that name 100 times. Content management system allows us to componentize our content and create content that's reusable, very similar to component content management system. But we can, for example, change the name of a page on a navigation menu in one place in WordPress, and it will change throughout the entire site. So simple updates are going to be important. The last thing I wanted to point out was this table here on the right. Just as a reminder, there's not all content management systems are created equal, right? So there's enterprise content management systems. We talked about this. These are like SharePoint and SharePoint sites. Web content management systems, these are like WordPress or Drupal. That's what we've been working on this semester, or I'm sorry, for this project. And then thirdly, component content management systems, example like Madcap Flare, which you worked on earlier in the semester. Just wanted to point out, again, just for clarification of sort of terminology, they're somewhat different. And so you've been exposed to web content management systems and component content management systems in this course, and have at the very least some baseline literacies for both of those. Finally, what are the specific digital literacies that you'll be focused on for web publishing? So the first is content management systems in the form of WordPress. The second is HTML and CSS. You've gone through the HTML and CSS tutorials, and will be some light HTML and CSS that you can add and kind of work through on your WordPress sites. Okay, so that's sort of all of the theoretical information. I want to do a quick walkthrough to kind of get you started in building things in WordPress. Okay, now I want to do just a really quick walkthrough of sort of how I would start designing my site and building my site in WordPress. So if you're in .org, this is probably what you're going to see if you go to your URL. If you're on .com, you're going to have to log in yourself in the WordPress.com using your WordPress.com credentials. If you're on .org, you can go to your URL and go to whatever your URL is and then /wp-admin, and that'll take you to a login screen that looks like this, and you'll use your login and password. If you can't remember it, you're going to have to do lost your password and reset it. But this is what the back end looks like, okay? So the first thing I'll show you is themes. Themes, for lack of a better way of describing it, essentially control the look and feel of your website, but also are going to control functionality as well. You can choose from any number of themes that are free to you, especially if you're using .org. If you're on .com, you might have to pay for some of these. I have no idea. But it doesn't really matter if you want to follow along with me. I'm going to use the default 2023 theme. That's mostly because the default 2023 theme is going to be as plain as possible, right? Just white background, black text. So that's going to make it much easier for us to go ahead and customize. So I'm going to add a couple plugins just to help with layout. Basically, what I want to show you is layout. I don't want to show you advanced sort of design techniques and things like that. Hopefully the tutorials help with that. But I want to show you how to lay things out in what I think is the best way. So the first plugin we'll install is called Genesis Blocks. Really, we're going to use that just for one block called the container block. And then we're going to download a plugin called Editor's Kit. So it's Editor's Kit, one word. Should be the first plugin that comes up. And I'm going to install that as well. So now we've got two plugins. And by default, let's take a look at what our site looks like. Right now, this is what it looks like. I'm going to add a page called Home, and I'm going to publish it. And I'm going to go to Settings and then Reading. And by default, your home page will be a list of posts. You should know the difference between posts and pages from the video tutorial. But here is a way to change it to our home page that we just created. So now our home page looks just like this. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Appearance and then Editor, and I'm going to edit a few things on my website. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Templates, and I am going to go to where's the default template? That's blank. That's index. Where's our, pages, here we go. So here's our default pages template. And there's a couple things I want to update. I don't want to include, and what I like to do in WordPress is to make sure that this is selected. It's called List View. And this will show you how everything is hierarchically sort of structured. So I don't want to automatically put the featured image and the title up up on every page, because I'm going to control that manually. So I'm going to actually delete post featured image. I'm going to delete title. And for post content, I'm going to actually move it outside of this group and just drag it underneath header. Okay. Now I'm just going to delete this entire group because I don't want comments or anything like that on my page designs either. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to save my page template. The other thing I will do is I'm going to click this little settings menu, and I'm going to make sure that my post content layout is this inner blocks use content width is off. So with it on, it's going to restrict the width of our window, our viewport. With it off, it's going to give us a full width layout. So I'm going to save that. And this is my new template. Just got a header, a footer, and my content. We can customize our header and footer later. I'm not going to show you how to do that. You should be able to do that based on the video tutorials. So now I can go into my home page, and my new default template looks like this, which is perfect. We can add, there's a lot of different libraries that are available, but I'm going to add like a hero section or a cover section. And you can create your own custom one, or you can use an existing one. I'm going to create a custom one real quick just to kind of show you how it works. So I'm just going to grab an image off of Unsplash. I'll just search tech or Trek. Sorry, I'll search tech. And we'll just use this one for now. Actually, no, let's use, it doesn't matter. I'm going to use this one. And I'm going to add the image under this cover block. So the block I use is called the cover block. And a cover block basically lets us use a background image and then add some text over it. So what I can do is you can actually do all kinds of things on the cover block. You can make it gradient. That looks pretty dang cool. We'll use that one, blue and black. And then I'm going to actually, inside of my cover block, add a heading, a tagline, and a button. So I'm just going to grab some dummy text. So this will be my heading. And then I'll add a tagline. Grab some more dummy text. And paste it here. And then I'm going to add a button. And we'll make the button this blue color to kind of go with our theme. And we'll do some call to action. So this is a very typical design pattern in web design. It's called the bite, snack, meal design pattern. Bite would be your headline, snack would be your tagline, and the button would take you to the meal where you would actually get to all of the content that we're trying to describe here. Okay, so this is how to add a top section. Just to give you an example, this methodology using sort of like completely blank, using a completely blank template, it's going to be best for people who want to control the design as best they can. So here's what it looks like. So here's what a top section looks like. One thing I don't like about it though is that the width is not full width, and I want the content to default to full width so that I can control the margins manually. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. We can actually, this is actually controlled at the theme level. So we'll go appearance and then editor. And this is going to take me to the theme level again. And I'm going to go to styles. And this style section actually controls color and typography, but it controls quite a bit of other things as well. So I'm just going to keep my default style for now, but I'm going to click this little edit styles, and I'm going to change the layout. So right now our content, the width of the main content area is only at 650 pixels. I'm going to actually set this to 100%. And then we can control margins more manually, and we can control our layout more manually. So now if I refresh, this should go 100%, which is perfect. And this is where you could also control things like your typography and your colors. So right now it's using system font. I'm going to use some other font. I'm going to use Inter, for example, and we'll see how that looks. Different themes will have different fonts loaded up as well. So this one, you can set fonts for headings, regular text, links. So I'll actually set, I'll use a serif font for my headings and a sans serif font for my text and see what that looks like. Pretty good. So that's a way to also update some of your themes styles as well, and then colors as well. So you can set button colors, for example, default button colors, default background colors, etc. So I'm not going to do that now, but very cool, very easy to do. So now that we've fixed the width issue, I can go ahead and add my columns. So I'm going to add before. I'm going to add a set of columns. So that this text, I'm just going to drag this group into my column. And so this text will only go halfway across the screen instead of all the way across the screen. But that looks a little better to me. And then the other thing I can do is if we want them to sort of line up here with this left side, so I will add a container. And in that container, I am going to make the max width 1200 pixels. Then I'm going to drag my columns into that container. It's kind of hard sometimes to see, but now my columns are inside the container. The container is 1200 pixels wide. So now everything should move in to 1200 pixels. So now that will line up everything. So that looks great. The only thing I would want to add, I think, is a little more padding on the top and bottom of the container. So I'll do 5% padding on the top and bottom of this container. And that should add a little bit of more space. Okay. So that's how to build a hero section. Pretty simple. How would I go ahead and do columns? So if I want to do columns, I would create a container. And I like to do 5% all around. And then I would add inside that container columns. So then we can do 3 columns. And let's say we wanted to add like a list of our services, for example. I don't know. So writing. I'm going to make this an H3 since we've already used an H2. I'm going to use some lorem ipsum text for that same bite snack meal design pattern. So bite snack meal would be our button. Learn more. And we can see multiple columns. Obviously, we would want to design these how you would want to design them, but you can copy and paste blocks too if you wanted. So I'm just going to copy these to see what it would look like. Writing, let's say we wanted a section for design and a section for coding. I don't know why there's an extra, dang it. I don't know why there's all these extra spaces. There we go. And then code. And we can see what this would look like with 3 columns. So let's see. Nice. So little 3-column layout there. just to kind of show you different layouts. So as you're building your pages, this is a more sort of manual style. You can control all of the design components. You can control the layouts. There are also situations where you could use pre-existing templates, and I'll show you really quickly what that might look like. So this would be sort of the more manual version. The other option would be to use a theme that has pre-existing templates. So let me just I'll install Cadence. This is another pretty standard. So now that we've installed Cadence, we can see how different it's going to look because of the theme, right? The theme changed the look and feel greatly. Let me just show you an example of a templated page. So we'll go templated page, and let's see if we can't find some existing layouts. So right now there is several layouts we can choose from. So let's go, I like this for About Us, for example. So if you had to create an About page, this would automatically build out the entire template, and then you could just customize, right? Move things around, resize things, change things so they match your color scheme. But for the most part, these are going to look pretty good, sort of templated. So it looks pretty good as is. Now you'll notice there's certain things like this title section that I don't really like. We'd probably want to update our template in the theme to remove this title section, page layout, right? So we can show the page title or not. And you'll notice again, this is the Cadence blocks theme. The functionality is a little different between the two themes. But if I turn off the show page title, we can see our templated page is going to look much closer to the template that we selected. It doesn't have that page title there anymore. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is remind you of how I'm grading this web portfolio so you can decide how you want to spend your most time. So first, it needs to be hosted and targeted. Obviously, that's going to be not a problem for you all. Second, you're going to need an About Me page, plus 2 TECM 5191 artifacts, meaning something that you can use as a portfolio piece on your portfolio website. And each of those 2 portfolio pieces or artifacts should have both context and competencies. And I will show you what I mean by context and competencies. So we'll take a look at my page or my website. This is just a listing of my different projects, and I'll go into one of my projects and you can see what I mean. So this would be an example of a portfolio page. This is a page you'll put together where you'll describe a project that you've done in 5191. So what I mean by context is just background information, information about the project. I'm using challenge solution or problem solution sort of format. You can use the STAR method. You can look that up, but it stands for situation, task, action, result. But I would use, kind of hearkening back to the beginning of the semester, some sort of structured content, right? Something that's the same across both of your portfolio piece pages. So I'm using challenge solution. I describe the challenge, I describe what project skills were involved, and I describe the solution, and then I also show the outcome of the actual design. So you would want to do a similar thing for your projects where you are providing context and then also providing what competencies. So I'm using this project skills box where I show my different project skills. You could create something similar where you could say, I used technical editing, single sourcing, and modular structured authoring. right? So somewhere where you're listing out what competencies you used or competencies that were required for a particular project, and then also some context behind what the project was. Okay, so that's all. I know there's a million other things you can do in WordPress. I just wanted to give you a quick lay of the land. You've got the option to have full control over the design or use templated patterns in WordPress. Either is totally fine. Just wanted to show you how to do both of those things. So that's it. If you've got questions, please let me know.